In the early 1980s, the world of music was buzzing with excitement. Michael Jackson had just reached a level of fame that few artists in history had ever touched. His album, Thriller, was everywhere, on radios, on televisions, and in conversations across the world. People admired his voice, his dancing, his creativity, and how he brought something fresh every time he stepped on a stage. Meanwhile, Stevie Wonder was already seen as one of the greatest musicians alive. His talent seemed limitless. He could sit at a piano, a keyboard, or almost any instrument and create something beautiful within seconds. Many younger artists looked up to him, and even legends respected him deeply. One afternoon, inside a warm and busy rehearsal hall, both Michael and Stevie found themselves preparing for a charity concert. The building echoed with sounds from different rooms, drums being tested, microphones humming, dancers practicing their steps, and technicians adjusting cables. The energy of the place felt alive, like something exciting could happen at any moment. Michael arrived quietly, as he usually did during rehearsals. He preferred to focus, to listen, to absorb the atmosphere before performing. He wore simple clothes, and although he was internationally famous, he moved gently, almost shyly, greeting people with small smiles and nods. People around him respected his space but also felt comforted by his presence. He didn't demand attention. His talent simply drew it. Stevie, on the other hand, brought a warm and cheerful vibe wherever he went. He enjoyed cracking jokes, laughing loudly, and making people feel relaxed. He sat at his keyboard, fingers lightly wandering across the keys, even when he was not officially rehearsing. Every time he touched the instrument, a rhythm or melody formed naturally, as if music lived inside him and always wanted to come out. Musicians nearby loved watching him play because it felt like they were witnessing creativity happening in real time. As rehearsals went on, several artists practiced their own segments for the upcoming show. Some worked through their set lists one more time, others practiced harmonies, and some simply chatted and enjoyed the company of fellow performers. But everyone knew that when Michael and Stevie finally crossed paths in the same room, something special usually happened. The two had developed a friendship built on mutual respect. Despite their different personalities, Michael being soft-spoken and Stevie being lively, they understood each other deeply when it came to music. Later in the day, Michael stepped into the main rehearsal area where Stevie was warming up with a small group of band members. Stevie heard Michael's footsteps and smiled immediately. "Well, well," Stevie said playfully, "if it isn't the young man who makes everyone faint with just one dance move." Michael laughed softly and greeted Stevie with a gentle, "Hey, Stevie, you sound great, as always." Some of the musicians around them exchanged excited looks. Whenever these two talked, joked, or even stood near each other, people paid attention. They were not just stars, they were legends in the making. Stevie continued tapping a rhythm on the keyboard, a quick, upbeat sound that caught Michael's ear. Michael nodded along lightly, swaying a little as he listened. "You like that groove?" Stevie asked, sensing Michael's reaction. "It's really nice," Michael replied. "You always come up with something cool." Stevie chuckled. "Of course I do. But the real question is, can you keep up if I don't tell you what I'm playing?" Michael raised his eyebrows with a mix of curiosity and amusement. Stevie was clearly teasing, but beneath the playful tone was a friendly challenge. "What do you mean?" Michael asked. "I mean improvising. No planning, no steps, no set list. Just jumping in and feeling the music," Stevie said, tapping another lively pattern on the keys. "You always look smooth on stage, but how about joining this without thinking too much?" Some musicians covered their smiles. They knew Stevie loved pushing other artists creatively, especially the ones he admired. Michael was one of those artists. Michael let out a small laugh that almost sounded like a secret being shared. He looked at Stevie, then at the band members who were watching closely. Even though he was known for his incredible stage presence, Michael still felt a hint of nervousness whenever someone challenged him in a friendly way. He liked being prepared. Rehearsals, steps, vocals, everything in order. Improvising wasn't new to him, but doing it spontaneously in front of Stevie Wonder was something different. "You're trying to get me in trouble," Michael joked softly. "Trouble?" Stevie replied with a wide grin. No, I'm trying to see how much genius we can squeeze into one room." Michael shook his head, smiling. Stevie's confidence was contagious, and soon the room felt filled with warm, excited energy. A few backup musicians started joining in casually, adding soft drums and a light bass line to Stevie's spontaneous groove. The sound filled the air gently, not too loud, but inviting. Michael listened carefully. His foot tapped to the rhythm almost without him realizing it. His shoulders loosened a little. His heartbeat stayed calm. But his creative instincts began waking up, the same instincts that made him one of the greatest performers of his time. Stevie sensed it immediately. "Oh, he's thinking about it," Stevie said in a playful sing-song voice. "He's thinking. Michael laughed again, more openly this time. "You're funny, Stevie." "So?" Stevie asked. "Are you afraid? Or are you joining me?" Michael looked around the room. Everyone was waiting, but not in a pressuring way. They were hopeful, excited, almost honored to witness what might come next. Michael took a small breath and felt a spark of courage mixed with creative excitement. "I'm not afraid," he said gently. "All right. I'll try." A few people clapped or let out cheerful sounds of encouragement. Stevie gave a playful clap as well, pleased with Michael's answer. "That's what I'm talking about," Stevie said. "Let's make something beautiful, just you, me, and whatever comes out." Michael stepped a little closer to the microphone stand, though he didn't touch it yet. He closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the rhythm building behind him. He wasn't thinking about dance steps or stage marks or any choreography. He wasn't thinking about cameras, crowds, or perfection. He was simply letting himself feel the music the way he did when he first discovered his love for singing as a child. The rehearsal room felt smaller now, but in a warm and comfortable way. It felt like a safe place to experiment, to create, to trust the music. Stevie's fingers continued moving naturally, sending out different patterns, waiting to see how Michael might respond. In that brief moment, nothing else mattered. Not the schedule, not the upcoming performance, not even the pressure of fame. Only the music mattered. And that was when Michael felt something inside him shift from hesitation to excitement. Stevie heard the tiny breath Michael took and smiled knowingly, sensing he was ready. "I knew you'd say yes," Stevie said softly, almost like a promise. "Let's see what happens." And with that simple, friendly dare, the stage was quietly set for a moment that would soon become legendary. A moment born not from planning, but from trust, spontaneity, and the magic that happens when two musical giants meet in the same room with nothing but a rhythm and a willingness to explore. The room felt different the moment Michael agreed to Stevie's playful challenge. It was as if the air became warmer, softer, and full of quiet excitement. Musicians who had been casually chatting or tuning instruments now stood a little straighter. Some exchanged quick looks, the kind that silently said, "This is going to be good." Even the sound engineers, who had been adjusting equipment in the background, paused what they were doing and leaned closer, not wanting to miss what was about to unfold. Stevie sat comfortably behind his keyboard, tapping out little rhythms like he was warming up for a game. He smiled in the direction of Michael's voice, his fingers lightly dancing across the keys. The groove he played was playful, bright, and full of life. Something that could grow in many different directions, depending on where the music wanted to go. That was the beauty of improvisation. There were no rules, and no one knew what the next few minutes would bring. Michael remained by the microphone, not holding it yet, but staying close enough to jump in when he felt the moment was right. He seemed calm, but inside he felt a quiet flutter of nerves mixed with excitement. He was used to rehearsing every detail, planning every step, and making sure everything looked perfect before performing. But this challenge from Stevie felt different. It was friendly, spontaneous, and full of creative possibility. It wasn't about perfection. It was about feeling the music in real time. Stevie's fingers created a simple rhythm and then added a melodic twist. He tilted his head slightly and said, "Hear that? That's your starting point." His tone was teasing but warm, the way a friend encourages another friend to join in a fun moment. Michael smiled, letting the sound wash over him. The beat was light and flexible, giving him space to explore. He nodded along, letting his body relax. When music came naturally, he always felt at home. The drummer tapped in softly, adding a gentle pattern that matched Stevie's rhythm without overpowering it. The bass player joined next, plucking warm notes that filled the room with a deeper, richer sound. Each musician added a small piece, letting the groove grow slowly and organically. No one rushed. They wanted the moment to unfold naturally. Stevie lifted his chin and called out, "Whenever you're ready, Michael. No pressure. Just have fun." Michael chuckled quietly, knowing that Stevie's playful encouragement was meant to make him feel comfortable. He took a breath, closed his eyes, and listened more deeply. The music felt inviting, like an open door waiting for him to walk through. But before he started singing, Stevie unexpectedly switched things up. His fingers moved faster, creating a new pattern, slightly more complex than the first one. It wasn't meant to confuse Michael. It was Stevie's way of keeping the energy alive, like tossing a surprise into the air to see how someone catches it. Michael opened his eyes in surprise. "You're already changing it?" he asked with a soft laugh. "Of course," Stevie replied. "That's the fun part. You gotta keep up." The musicians around them laughed gently. They knew Stevie loved doing this, pushing other artists just enough to spark something new in them. It was never competitive in a harsh way. It was more like two friends showing each other what they could do, celebrating the magic of music together. Michael shook his head with an amused smile. He wasn't annoyed. He was intrigued. "All right," he said. "I can handle that." Stevie added another playful twist to the melody. His fingers moved lightly, effortlessly, like he was writing a story with sound. Michael stepped closer to the microphone. He didn't sing right away. Instead, he hummed softly, letting his voice warm up along with the rhythm. His hum blended smoothly with the groove, simple but promising. It was like the first stroke of color on a blank canvas. Stevie paused the main melody and said, "Oh, that's nice. Do that again." Michael hummed again, slightly louder this time. The band followed him, adjusting the music so that his humming sat perfectly on top of the rhythm. It was a small moment, but it showed how easily Michael could shape sound around him. Stevie grinned widely. "See? You've got this," he said. "Let's keep going." Michael relaxed a little more. He felt the groove settling into his body, guiding him. Improvisation wasn't about planning. It was about letting go, trusting the music, and allowing instinct to lead the way. Stevie jumped into another playful musical line. "Okay, now I'm gonna make it interesting," he said with a laugh. He shifted the key slightly. It wasn't a dramatic change, but it was enough to add a different flavor to the groove. The bass player caught on instantly. The drummer adjusted the rhythm, keeping everything smooth. The room was filled with musicians who were not just skilled but sensitive to the energy around them. They listened as much as they played. Michael raised an eyebrow. "You're really testing me, Stevie." "Oh, no," Stevie replied, pretending to sound innocent. "I'm just giving you room to shine." Michael let out a soft laugh. The atmosphere was light and friendly, and the musicians were clearly enjoying themselves. This wasn't a rehearsal anymore. It was a playground for creativity. A few backup singers walked in to see what was happening. They stood along the wall quietly, watching with curiosity and admiration. It wasn't every day that they got to witness two music legends working together without a script. Stevie suddenly played a quick, sharp flourish on the keyboard, bright and energetic. "You hear that?" he asked. "Yes," Michael replied, listening closely. "That means it's your turn." Michael smiled and finally placed his hand gently on the microphone. He still didn't rush into singing. Instead, he spoke softly, "Okay, but don't switch it again the moment I start." Stevie laughed loudly. "No promises." Michael shook his head, amused. Even though Stevie said he couldn't promise anything, Michael knew he could handle whatever came next. He felt ready now. The music had drawn him in, and he trusted it. Stevie lowered the rhythm just a little, giving Michael a wide space to step into vocally. The room quieted, not in silence but in focus. It felt like everyone's attention gathered around Michael, waiting for his first improvised note. Michael closed his eyes once more, and a feeling of calm washed over him. He wasn't thinking about how he looked or whether he would hit the right notes. He was simply feeling the music the way he always did when he was alone, practicing or dreaming up new melodies. Music had always been his safe place, and even in a room full of people, that feeling remained. He took a soft breath, letting the rhythm guide him. But just as he was about to begin, Stevie threw in another playful comment. "Oh yeah, one more thing," Stevie said. "Don't be too good, okay? I still gotta look talented next to you." Everyone burst into gentle laughter. The tension disappeared instantly. Michael shook his head, smiling as if saying, "Stevie, you're too much." Now he was ready. He leaned into the mic and gently sang a single note. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was smooth, warm, and full of emotion. That one note floated through the room like a spark catching fire. The musicians straightened, instantly inspired. Michael followed the note with another one, then a short, melodic phrase, letting his voice flow like a soft stream over Stevie's rhythm. Stevie swayed in delight. "There it is," he said. "That's the sound." Michael kept going, letting his vocals glide effortlessly. He wasn't pushing. He wasn't trying to impress. He was simply responding to the music, like two friends talking without words. The band found their groove around him, adjusting the volume and tone to support his voice. It became clear that something special was beginning. Not a performance, not a rehearsal, but a moment of pure musical connection. Stevie listened carefully, smiling knowingly. His playful dare had worked. Michael wasn't just improvising, he was shining. What started as a friendly challenge was slowly turning into a powerful, unexpected collaboration, building toward a moment that would soon become unforgettable. The moment Michael released that first gentle note into the room, something changed. Not just in the air, but in the energy of every person who stood there watching. His voice carried a warmth that immediately blended with Stevie's rhythm, like two colors mixing naturally without any effort. Musicians who had been standing casually now leaned forward, their eyes focused on him. Even though it was only one soft note, it felt like the beginning of something magical. Stevie continued playing, but his smile widened. He could hear in Michael's tone that the younger artist had fully stepped into the groove. There was no hesitation anymore. Michael's presence had moved from quiet curiosity to confident expression. It was the shift Stevie had been waiting for. Michael held the microphone with both hands, not gripping it tightly but gently, as if he was holding something delicate. He took another breath and let his voice dance lightly over the rhythm. He didn't rush into words. Instead, he created soft melodies, little slides, and gentle runs that floated in the air like a warm breeze. His voice rose and fell in smooth waves, each note finding a perfect home inside Stevie's improvised tune. The backup singers glanced at each other, impressed but not surprised. This was Michael Jackson, after all. Even when he didn't plan, Even when he simply let himself feel the moment, the music that came from him seemed effortless and full of emotion. Stevie leaned into his keyboard, nodding along. "That's it, Michael," he said with a playful excitement in his voice. "Don't think, just feel." Michael smiled while singing, letting emotion guide him rather than logic. His humming slowly turned into soft lines of improvised lyrics. Nothing too specific, more like short phrases and sounds that fit the rhythm perfectly. He let his voice act like another instrument, weaving in and out of the music rather than dominating it. The drummer matched Michael's energy, adding light taps on the snare and gentle touches on the hi-hat. The bass player kept the groove steady, adding smooth transitions that gave flavor to the moment. Everything blended in harmony. It wasn't rehearsed, but it didn't need to be. Everyone in the room was listening closely, adjusting naturally, as if they had all practiced this 100 times. A few stagehands who were setting up equipment in the back paused their work. They exchanged quiet smiles, realizing that they were witnessing something rare. People who worked behind the scenes didn't usually get to see spontaneous moments like this. They saw planned performances, organized rehearsals, and structured run-throughs. But this was a moment of pure artistic freedom. Michael opened his eyes briefly and looked at Stevie. Stevie nodded proudly, playing with even more joy. "Sing whatever comes to your heart," Stevie said, not loud enough to interrupt the groove, but clear enough for Michael to hear. Michael's voice rose a little higher, adding sweetness and confidence. He began to sway gently, letting his body move with the rhythm. Even when he wasn't dancing full out, his movements had a natural elegance. It was like his body understood music the same way his voice did. Stevie suddenly changed the melody again, adding a playful twist. He hit a series of higher notes, switching the pattern in a way that could have easily surprised or confused another artist. But Michael didn't pause. His instincts caught the shift instantly. His voice adjusted, following the new direction as if he had predicted it. Stevie laughed softly. "Okay, I see you," he said with excitement. He loved testing people, not to make them uncomfortable, but to spark new ideas. And Michael was proving that he could keep up with anything Stevie gave him. Some musicians clapped lightly at Stevie's playful comment. They were enjoying the musical conversation happening in front of them. It wasn't a competition. It was two brilliant artists speaking through their instruments, challenging each other in the friendliest way possible. Michael added a slightly stronger vocal line. His voice carried more texture now, more soul. He stretched a note beautifully, holding it just long enough to make the room go still for a moment. Even Stevie paused his melody for half a second, appreciating the strength and clarity in Michael's delivery. Then, as if answering Michael's beautiful note, Stevie returned with a new chord progression, richer and fuller than before. It felt like two storytellers taking turns adding chapters to the same story. Every chord, every note, every breath added something meaningful. Michael stepped back from the mic slightly and let out a soft, rhythmic hee-hee, one of the signature sounds his fans loved. But here, it wasn't planned. It was natural, a spontaneous expression of joy. The musicians laughed quietly in admiration. They knew he wasn't performing for an audience. He was simply immersed in the music. The rhythm grew stronger as more musicians joined in, intrigued by the evolving sound. A guitarist lightly added soft strums, blending perfectly with the groove. A percussionist tapped on a small hand drum, giving the beat a gentle lift. Every addition was subtle, respectful of the space Michael and Stevie were creating. Michael moved closer to the microphone again and let his voice glide into a new melody. The notes he chose were unexpected, creative, and full of feeling. It didn't sound like a pop song or a ballad. It sounded like a moment, raw, beautiful, and unrepeatable. Stevie loved it. "Yes, yes, yes," he said with joy, keeping the rhythm alive underneath Michael's voice. "That's the spirit!" Michael laughed softly again, but he didn't break the flow. His voice kept moving, creating soft, soulful patterns that felt both playful and powerful. At that moment, a few dancers who had been rehearsing in another room walked in. They heard the music from the hallway and followed it like a trail. When they saw Michael singing freely with Stevie playing beside him, they stood still, eyes wide, like children watching something magical happen. They knew this wasn't part of the plan. It was a natural moment of creativity that they were lucky enough to witness. Michael began adding small vocal riffs, rising and falling smoothly. Each one caused little reactions around the room, smiles, nods, even tiny gasps from people who couldn't believe how naturally he could shape a melody on the spot. Stevie suddenly added a bold musical flourish on the keyboard, a bright sparkle of sound that filled the room like sunlight through a window. Michael responded instantly with a playful vocal run. It was like they were finishing each other's sentences through music. Then Stevie changed tempo just slightly. The beat felt a little quicker, a little more lively. It wasn't a dramatic shift, but it offered a new space for Michael to explore. Michael caught the change immediately, shifting his vocals to match. His instinct was sharp, his sense of timing perfect. People around them shook their heads with disbelief, smiling with admiration. They were watching two geniuses communicate in a language only they truly understood. Michael, feeling the groove settle deeper into him, finally allowed a few simple words to slip into his improvised singing. They weren't structured lyrics, more like short, heartfelt phrases tied together by the rhythm. He was speaking through sound more than through meaning. Stevie laughed with delight. "That's what I wanted," he said. "Just let it flow." Michael continued, letting the music guide him like a friend leading him through a familiar place. He wasn't afraid anymore. He wasn't thinking about whether the notes were perfect. He was simply enjoying the moment. The musicians felt it too. The room almost felt like it was breathing with them. Every sound felt full of imagination, emotion, and joy. The audience didn't know it yet, but the people in that rehearsal room were witnessing the start of a legendary moment, a moment created in real time by two artists who trusted music more than anything else. And the best part was still yet to come. The energy in the rehearsal room had already grown warm and bright, but no one knew that the next 12 minutes would rise into something far beyond ordinary music. What began as a playful dare between Stevie Wonder and Michael Jackson was slowly transforming into a moment that felt almost magical, one of those rare times when creativity becomes something bigger than anyone planned. Michael stood at the microphone, his body swaying gently with the rhythm, while Stevie sat behind the keyboard, smiling like someone who had just opened the door to a treasure chest. The musicians around them were fully alert now, their eyes focused, their ears tuned, and their hearts ready. They didn't want to miss a single second of what was happening. The groove Stevie had started continued steady and smooth, but then he added a new rhythm with his left hand. It wasn't louder, just richer, as if he had layered an extra color into the music. Michael reacted instantly, letting his voice glide upward, then downward, matching the fresh texture. His vocal run flowed so naturally that it made several people in the room glance at each other with wide eyes, silently saying, "Did you hear that?" Stevie laughed with joy. Okay, you're not playing around," he said, lifting the tempo slightly. His fingers moved across the keyboard with ease, shaping new musical patterns every few seconds. It was like watching someone paint a picture that changed and grew as they worked. Michael continued singing, adding more volume now, more emotion. His voice became a little stronger, a little brighter, as if something inside him had awakened. He wasn't holding back. The sound that came out of him filled the space with warmth and excitement. Every note felt alive. The drummer sensed the rising energy and added sharper taps on the cymbals. The bass player leaned into his instrument, creating deeper, rounder tones that carried the groove forward. The guitarist added soft touches, letting his chords decorate the music without taking attention away. Everyone in the band supported the moment, not competing, not overwhelming, but working together like one heartbeat. Stevie switched key again. It was a bold change, surprising but not shocking. It took the music in a fresh direction, like turning a corner into a new scenery. Michael responded without missing a beat. His voice curved into the new key, shaping a new series of beautiful notes. Stevie clapped once while still playing. "Oh, he caught that! He caught that right away!" People in the room laughed softly, impressed by how naturally Michael adjusted. It was clear that he wasn't following the music anymore. He was creating with it. He was listening to every sound and responding with instinct, imagination, and pure joy. The dancers who had entered earlier began moving lightly at the back of the room. They didn't perform big steps. Instead, they allowed their bodies to sway with the rhythm, caught up in the moment. Even they couldn't resist the energy. Michael stepped back from the microphone briefly, letting the band play. He clapped along to the beat, encouraging the musicians, smiling at Stevie. He loved this kind of creative play, this sense of freedom that only comes when music leads the way. Stevie, feeling the energy building, leaned closer to the mic attached to his keyboard and sang a line of playful, improvised lyrics. His voice carried warmth and humor, making everyone laugh. Michael replied with his own improvised line, singing back to Stevie like two friends having a musical conversation. Their exchange grew more exciting. Stevie sang something unexpected. Michael answered with a high note. Stevie changed tempo. Michael added a fast vocal run. It was like watching two brilliant minds communicate without words, using only rhythm, melody, and emotion. A sound engineer standing near the back whispered to a coworker, "This is unreal." And it was. Moments like this didn't happen often, especially between two artists of such legendary talent. It was as if the music had taken control and everyone in the room was simply lucky enough to witness it. Stevie turned slightly on his bench and called out to the band, "Let's lift it up." The musicians immediately understood. The drummer expanded the rhythm, making it more lively. The bass became stronger, pushing the groove forward with energy. The guitar chords sparkled more brightly. Everything began to rise, like a wave building toward a crest. And then Michael stepped forward again. He released a powerful note, his voice soaring high above the music. The sound was clear, bright, and full of life. It sent a warm shiver through the whole room. People gasped softly, not because they were surprised Michael could sing like that, but because of how naturally it happened, how perfectly it fit the moment. Michael followed the high note with a playful riff, twisting the melody as if painting shapes in the air. His movements grew more expressive. He began stepping lightly, sliding his foot, turning his body. He wasn't doing a full dance routine, but the small gestures carried the same magic as his famous dance moves. Every step was controlled yet free, smooth yet spontaneous. Stevie watched him with pure delight. "That's it! Go, Michael!" he called out. The room erupted in soft cheers. Even though it wasn't a performance for an audience, everyone present felt like they were witnessing a once-in-a-lifetime moment. Music wasn't just being played, it was being created right there, in real time. Michael returned to the microphone and let out a rhythmic "hee" that blended beautifully with the beat. He spun once, then added a quick vocal phrase that made even Stevie raise his eyebrows in surprise and admiration. Stevie changed chords again, faster this time, like throwing a quick, playful challenge. The musicians followed instantly. And Michael? He jumped right into the new pattern without hesitation. His voice matched the shifting rhythm perfectly, like water flowing into a new shape. People in the room couldn't help smiling, shaking their heads, whispering things like, "This is perfect," and "What is happening right now?" The entire vibe felt unreal, almost dreamlike. Stevie's fingers moved more passionately now, pushing the music forward. His face lit up, clearly enjoying every second. Michael responded with even more creativity, layering his voice in ways that seemed effortless. The musicians played with their full hearts, inspired by the chemistry between the two stars. The groove grew fuller, richer, brighter. The room felt alive, as if the music itself were breathing. Michael added a short, emotional melody. Stevie responded by singing back a playful twist. Michael sang again, Stevie answered. It felt like friendly musical conversation, full of joy and creativity. Then, in the most unexpected and beautiful way, the entire room fell into a soft, controlled quiet as Stevie played a gentle chord progression. It wasn't planned. He simply felt it. The musicians lowered their volume at the same time, as if following an unseen direction. Michael sensed the shift and softened his voice, singing in a low, smooth tone that wrapped around the quiet music like silk. The moment became tender, intimate, almost peaceful. Everyone in the room held their breath. It felt like time slowed. Then slowly, Stevie lifted the rhythm again, encouraging the band to rise. The musicians built the sound higher once more, and Michael's voice grew with it, reaching new emotional heights. The room filled with sound, movement, joy, connection, and pure artistic spirit. The moments flowed naturally, one into another, with no breaks, no planning, no hesitation. 12 minutes passed, like a single heartbeat, smooth, warm, and unforgettable. Finally, Michael ended with a long, beautiful note that brought everything together. Stevie closed with a gentle flourish on the keyboard, like the final word in a poetic sentence. Silence followed for the briefest moment. Then the room burst into applause, not loud concert applause, but warm, excited, genuine appreciation. People laughed, cheered, and looked at each other with astonishment. Stevie leaned back, smiling widely. "Well," he said, "that was something." Michael laughed softly, wiping a bit of sweat from his forehead. "That was amazing," he replied. They both knew they had just shared a moment that couldn't be repeated, a moment of pure musical truth. And the people in the room would remember it for the rest of their lives. When the music finally faded and the last warm vibrations settled into the corners of the rehearsal room, a soft hush fell over everyone present. For a moment, nobody moved, nobody spoke. It was as if the room needed a second to breathe, to hold on to the last traces of magic before reality returned. The musicians stood still, the dancers slowly lowered their arms, and even the crew paused mid-step. Everyone felt the same thing. Something extraordinary had just happened. Stevie Wonder sat back from his keyboard with a huge, satisfied smile spread across his face. He didn't rush to speak. He simply took in the atmosphere, almost as if he were listening to the echo of the music playing inside his own mind. He lifted his chin slightly and let out a joyful laugh, the kind that came from deep happiness and appreciation. Michael Jackson, standing in front of the microphone, looked almost amazed by what had just taken place. Small beads of sweat rested on his forehead, but his expression was calm, peaceful, almost glowing. His chest rose and fell gently, the way it does when someone is coming down from an emotional high. He placed one hand on his heart for a second, taking a quiet breath, trying to process the moment himself. A few musicians exchanged looks that said more than words could express. One of the backup singers whispered to another, "I've never seen anything like that." The other nodded, eyes still wide, as if replaying the last 12 minutes in her mind. Finally, Stevie broke the silence. "Well," he said with playful pride, "I think that's what you call a good time." The room filled with soft laughter, warm and lighthearted. The tension melted instantly. People clapped, not the big stage kind of applause, but appreciative, sincere clapping from those who truly understood what had just taken place in front of them. Michael let out a small laugh of his own. "Stevie," he said gently, "you almost made me run out of breath." "Run out of breath?" Stevie joked. "Michael, I was waiting for you to give me a chance to breathe." The musicians laughed again, enjoying the friendly back and forth between the two legends. It was clear there was no competition, only admiration and joy. They lifted each other up, pushed each other, inspired each other, and created something unforgettable. Michael walked over to Stevie, and the two embraced warmly. It wasn't dramatic or overdone, just a simple, genuine hug shared between two artists who had just bonded over pure, spontaneous creativity. Their friendship, already strong, felt even deeper now. "That was incredible," Michael said quietly, almost as if speaking to himself. Stevie tilted his head in his direction. "You know what, Michael? You're a natural. I always knew you could do it." Michael shook his head shyly. "You challenged me," he said. "You really challenged me." "And you rose to it," Stevie replied, tapping the keyboard lightly with his fingers. "That's what makes great music. That's what makes great artists." A few of the band members came forward, offering soft applause and warm comments. One said, "You two just lit up the entire room." Another added, "This wasn't a rehearsal. This was history." Michael smiled, politely thanking everyone. He wasn't the type to boast. His humility made him even more admired by the people around him. Stevie rested his hands on the keys again and played a slow, gentle chord. "You know," he said lightly, "if we ever do this on stage, people might faint." Michael chuckled, shaking his head. "They might faint because of you." "No, no," Stevie protested playfully. "They faint because of you." The two continued their friendly teasing, bringing even more laughter to the room. Their bond felt as smooth and natural as the music they had just created. As people slowly returned to their tasks, packing equipment, checking cables, practicing small sections, the rehearsal room buzzed with excited conversations. Musicians whispered about Stevie's quick key changes, Michael's effortless vocal responses, the surprising tempo shifts, and the way the energy kept rising higher and higher. Someone near the back said, "I wish someone recorded that." Another responded, "Even if it were recorded, it wouldn't feel the same. You had to be here." And they were right. There was something special about witnessing a moment that wasn't planned or polished. It was raw, alive, and filled with emotion. It was the kind of moment people would talk about long after the day ended. Michael sat down on a nearby speaker, taking a small break. He looked thoughtful, not tired, but reflective. A young dancer walked over shyly and said, "Michael, that was beautiful." He smiled warmly. "Thank you. It felt beautiful." "Did you plan any of that?" she asked softly. Michael laughed gently. "Not even 1 second of it. Stevie didn't let me plan anything." From across the room, Stevie shouted with a grin, "That's right. Planning is overrated." Everyone laughed again, filling the room with light-hearted joy. Michael stood up and walked back toward Stevie. "You know," he said, "when you changed the key the second time, I almost lost it." "Almost?" Stevie replied. "Almost is not good enough. I need to change it 3 more times next time." Michael placed a hand over his face and laughed, shaking his head. "You're impossible." "And you're unstoppable," Stevie replied, tapping a playful rhythm on the keyboard. People around them smiled, knowing they were witnessing a genuine moment of connection, an artistic friendship built on trust, admiration, and creativity. Stevie leaned back in his seat. "You know what I love most about today?" he said. Michael looked at him curiously. "That everything we did was honest," Stevie continued. "No planning, no pressure, just music, just joy." Michael nodded slowly. "It felt like freedom." "That's because it was," Stevie said with a warm smile. "Music is freedom, Michael. When you let go, it gives you something back. Michael looked around the room, seeing the smiles on people's faces. He felt grateful, not just for the talent he had been blessed with, but for moments like this, where he could share it with people he admired and loved. As the rehearsal wrapped up, people began collecting their belongings, still buzzing from the experience. Some musicians patted Michael on the back, saying things like, "Incredible work," or "You two should do a duet soon." Dancers whispered excitedly, replaying their favorite parts. Even the stagehands walked away with smiles, knowing they had seen something extraordinary. Before leaving, Michael turned to Stevie again. "Thank you," he said sincerely, "for the challenge." Stevie waved his hand as if brushing off the seriousness. "Thank me? Thank you. You made the music come alive. You made it fly." Michael shook his head modestly. "I just followed your lead." "No," Stevie corrected softly. "We followed each other." The two friends stood quietly for a moment, both understanding the truth in that simple sentence. Music wasn't about one person leading and the other following. It was about connection, about merging talents, emotions, and instincts into something greater than any one person could create alone. As they walked out of the rehearsal room, the soft evening light poured through the hallway windows, wrapping the two legends in a gentle glow. They talked casually, laughing and sharing small thoughts about music, life, and future ideas. Behind them, the rehearsal room slowly became still again. The instruments rested quietly. The microphone stood silent. But the memory of what happened remained alive, floating in the air, settled into the walls, living in the hearts of everyone who had witnessed it. And though this moment was never filmed or officially recorded, it became a story people told again and again. A story of two musical giants daring each other, trusting each other, and creating something that felt almost like magic. It became the kind of memory that grows more special with time. A reminder that sometimes the greatest performances are the ones no one planned. The ones born from friendship, courage, creativity, and pure, joyful music. And for everyone who was there, those 12 minutes didn't just become legendary, they became unforgettable.